subscribe, and I'll do a part 3. Either way, I'm gonna do a part 3. So basically, let's get on with the what if. Playing some Shinobi Striker. So it starts the what if off with So we returned with what was it called? Dun, dun, dun. So of course Gladion takes out Team Skull. Lily they all hear about it, and Ash, Christian, and Rotom Dex, and Pikachu, of course, and Jolteon, who's out of its Pokeball, are all walking around, and they see Gladion, and Christian and Ash see a Lycanroc and a blonde-haired kid versus a Blastoise and some sailor dude. And immediately Christian runs over and says, "Gladion!" And Gladion goes, "Oh, hey." It's like, "We are battling after this." And he says, "Sure." And then he says, "Blastoise is unable to battle." He's like, "Alright, let's battle." And then he says, "How about a Lycanroc battle? Go, Lycanroc!" And then he sends out Dawn Lycanroc. And he goes, "What kind of Lycanroc is that? I've never seen it." And he says, "I call this a Dawn Lycanroc." Dawn. Alright, let's go. So immediately they both say, "Stone Edge!" And the Stone Edges clash. Going poof, poof, poof. And then bam! They clash. And then he says, "Alright, Christian's Lycanroc says, 'Alright, Acceleratone!'" So he blitzes over to Midnight Lycanroc and slashes it with a Stone Edge, with a stone's. Alright, and then he jumps up, and then Lycanroc jumps and he says, "Alright, Accelerock!" He'd say, "Rah, rah, 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 rah." And then he'd say, "Lycanroc, use counter!" is what Gladion would say. And then when he's about to get countered, he says, "Now, dodge it and use counter!" Lycanroc Dawn would dodge it and punch Gladion's Lycanroc in the stomach, sending it flying back. And then he says, "Alright, Gladion, you ready?" And he says, "Alright, sure." And then Gladion says, "Crunch!" And Christian also says, "Crunch!" They start biting each other's shoulders. And then he's like, "Oh yeah," and Ash is like, "Whoa, that is awesome!" And then they both say, "Stone Edge!" And then Christian would say, "Alright, it's time to finish this, Gladion. Eat this!" He'd do a Z move. It'd say, "Alright, use Continental Crush!" And Gladion would say, "I know that one too!" And go, "Continental Crush!" And then they'd clash, exploding everything, sending everyone back, even those two. But then Christian's Lycanroc would get up, and he would be winning the match. And Gladion's like, "Dang, you are insane!" And Christian says, "The match isn't over yet!" And he's like, "What? Bring out your next Pokemon! We're having a full 3-on-3 battle!" And then Gladion says, "Umbreon, let's go!" And then Christian says, "Alright, Lycanroc, you did good. Return." So when Lycanroc returns, he says, "Go, Jolteon!" And he says, "Nice, you got a Jolteon." And he says, "Same for Umbreon." And then he says, "Jolteon! Thunder! Jol!" And then he'd say after that, and then Gladion would say, "Dark Pulse!" But then the Thunder would win and basically hit Gladion's thing, and then Christian would say, "Use Quick Attack!" And Gladion would say, "Use Quick Attack as well!" And Christian would say, "Use Pin Missile!" And then Gladion's like, "Pin Missile!" And then all kinds of pin missiles flow at Gladion, hitting him. Hitting Umbreon, actually, is what I should have said. Hitting Umbreon. Then, after he hits... And then he says, after that, "Wild Charge!" And Gladion's like, "What? Dang it!" And then he says, "Stop, Jolteon! Now! Volt! Now use Thunderbolt! Jolty! Ah! And then he'd say, Dark Pulse! And they'd both clash, with Thunderbolt eventually winning, electrocuting Umbreon. And then and then Gladion would say, use Iron Tail! And Christian's like, Iron Tail? Alright then, use your strongest move. We'll use this one then. Thunder! So easily Umbreon would destroy that and hit Jolteon in the face. And then he'd be like, Urgh! And he's like, alright. And then Gladion would say, Iron Tail once more. And Christian would say, Wild Charge! I'm kidding, he doesn't say Wild Charge, he says, use Volt Tackle! And Gladion's like, ah! And then they both clash, with eventually a tie. And that's it, because they're not going to use their other Pokemon, because that's dangerous. One day, so after that, Ash wants to battle Gladion with his Rockruff. Blah, 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 blah. That would all go pretty normal, even when Team Rocket shows up. So, moving on to the island for the Akala arc. So basically, Kiawe would still catch his Marowak, moving on to the Olivia fight. Now, Christian would want to team up with Ash to do it, so they would. And she says, wait, you already have a Rocky MZ. Oh yeah, you beat me before. And he says, yeah, but I want to battle you again with Ash. See how we work in a double battle. And she says, alright, but I'm going all out in this fight. And he says, that's not a problem with me. Is that a problem with you, Ash? And Ash goes, no, actually, I kind of want to. And they says, go, Rockruff! And Christian says, Lycanroc, let's go! Now he'd send out his Lycanroc. And Olivia's like, oh, what kind of Lycanroc is that? I've never seen it. And he says, Dawn Lycanroc. It is very strong. It's got the capabilities of a midday and a midnight. And she goes, cool! Let's go! So then she'd say, Lycanroc, Probopass, go! She'd say, Lycanroc, use Rock Slide! And Christian would say, Ash, get back! Stone Edge, now! And then destroy those rock slides, hitting the Lycanroc. And then she'd say, alright, Probopass, Giga Impact on Lycanroc! Lycanroc, Rock Slide! He'd go, rock! And they'd both head for Rockruff. I'm kidding, they wouldn't go for Lycanroc. They'd actually go for Rockruff, because it was a trick. So then he'd say, so then after that, they were both target, and he says, Lycanroc, counter for Rockruff! Lycanroc would jump in the way and punch Probopass and Lycanroc back. And then he says, Ash, get ready! And Ash is like, what? He says, pick up Rockruff and put it on your back, Lycanroc. And then Lycanroc picks it up and puts it on its back, and then jumps up in the air. And then he says, now, Lycanroc, the Crimson Moon, and seals it up. Use Continental Crush! Boom! Knocking, sending them both back. Then he'd say, Lycanroc, let Rockruff take the rest of it. And Ash would say, Rockruff, Rock Throw! Boom, 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 boom. Defeating Lycanroc and Probopass. And later on, Ash would get Dusk Lycanroc. No, but let me explain how that happens. Rockruff the next morning escapes. And then Christian, going in a cave, goes in there. But then Gladion is also there, and he goes, hey Gladion. And then he says, hey, what are you doing in here? He says, well, I'm bored. He says, alright, you can stay then. So, what are you doing? He says, training Silvally. And then he says, can I join? He says, no, you don't have a Silvally. Silvally doesn't really like anyone else. And he says, oh, really? And then he says, Silvally, let's go! And then he sends out a type null. He's like, how did you get that? Faba said there was 3 of them. I took one after leaving. He's like, whatever, let's go. So they start to grow bonds with their Silvallies. Once they realize that Christian is gone, they're like, where'd he go? Christian would get a note that says, where are you? And he'd say, he wouldn't write back. He'd say, alright, whatever. But then his Lycanroc hears the howl, and he's like, Rock. And so does Gladion's Midnight Lycanroc. He's like, Lycanroc. Then he says, and Christian says, I've heard this before. Rockruff did that before it evolved. He said, I guess Ash's Rockruff might be evolving. Well, let's train. We'll let our Lycanrocs deal with this. So these two head out, and so does Olivia's Lycanroc. They all go to help out Rockruff. So they see Rockruff fighting Tapu Lele, and the 3 of them step in. They're like, Rock! And Gladion's and Christian's both use Stone Edge, and Olivia's uses Rock Slide. Hitting Tapu Lele, doing nothing. Now this would do absolutely nothing to it, as I just said. So this would so basically he would start so basically blah 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 blah, and Lycanroc would evolve into Dusk, and Ash would arrive, and they'd all go, and Olivia would arrive, Gladion would arrive because he noticed, Christian would arrive, and they'd all cheer and saying, Lycanroc, Lycanrocs, Lycanrocs. Rotom Dex adding them and saying, these are the final 2 forms of Lycanroc. Says, we completed the Lycanroc circle. So basically the next day they'd leave. Now comes the next thing. Now I have no idea when the Masked Royal art comes. I'm pretty sure it's after the Dream Encounter. I'm really sure that it's after the Dream Encounter episode thingy. There's like a couple after. Moving on to the Dream Encounter. Doop. So after returning from Akala and... Oh yeah, so basically Mimikyu, when Team Rocket shows up, Christian just Stone Edges them, and Ash actually does try out his Rockinium Z. It does work, and Christian would actually try out his new Z move that Olivia gave him, Lycanium Z. He'd use it, and then he'd say, Splintered Storm Shards! The intense music for Sun and Moon will play. And basically then they would destroy Team Rocket, both of them with their Z moves, calling it Continental Shards. Where Christian creates the shards, that breaking up Ash's Continental Crush, and then with that power infuses it, making an even stronger attack. So moving on to the Dream Encounter. So these two would just be staying, and Ash and Christian would Ash would say that he had a dream. Christian doesn't believe him. He's like, Ash, you're bluffing. You didn't have a dream about Solgaleo and Lunala. But then they find Cosmog, and they'd blitz and they'd run into the classroom and say, Professor Kakui! Professor Kakui! Professor Kakui! With Riolu and Pikachu running with them, since those are their 2 starter Pokemon. And people are like, how is Riolu not evolved? It hasn't had enough friendship. It will evolve soon. Just saying, it will evolve soon. So basically, blah blah blah. The day would go normal. So when the Aether Foundation comes, Christian's like, oh hey Lusamine, hey Brunette, oh yeah, and hello Wick and Faba, and hey Faba. They'd all say hey, and then he would introduce all of them. This is Lusamine. This is Wick. This is Brunette, and this is Faba. But out of nowhere, out of freaking nowhere, Christian's Lycanroc would pop out of its Pokeball growling at Faba. And Christian's like, Faba, what's going on? He says, Lycanroc, what's going on? Urgh. And out of nowhere, he gets an aura wave from his Riolu and says, we don't trust him. He seems kind of suspicious. And he's like, and then he says, hey, Lusamine, or Wick, or Burnett, do you guys know how to do a lie detector test? And they don't. No one knows how to. So, basically, he says, I'll do a lie detector test myself. So, basically, they tie Fob up to a chair, because they want to actually, because why would his Pokemon randomly go wild, thinking that Faba did it? Faba has a suspicion that he's going to be evil soon. Basically, Lycanroc will create 3 stone edges around him, threatening Faba to hit him with it. So Faba would be really scared, and then Riolu would question... what up, my guy, Caden? What up? So, Caden, this is Naruto Boruto Shinobi Striker. If you want to download it, you can download the demo if you want. You can download the demo. Hello, my friend. I have not seen you when they... I'm kidding, I've seen you yesterday. What up, dude? Oh, whatever. He left. So basically, Faba would be normal, and Faba would not trust Christian anymore after what he just did. He'd walk away. So basically, so then, Christian would be like, sorry, Faba. It's just that Lycanroc was so suspicious of you. And Faba would say, why I, the branch chief Faba, would do anything like that? And then he says, "'Cause you're suspicious." And then Ash goes, "Shots fired!" Nah, I'm kidding. No, Ash would never do that. Ash would never do that. Yeah. So that's it for now.